Hi folks, it's Bob from my Fulton woodworking shop. In this two-part video, I'll walk through the process of making 3 walnut tables. The tables are of my own design, measuring roughly 16.5 inches wide by 22 inches deep and standing 22 inches high, with one drawer using a single wooden dovetail guide mounted in the bottom center of the drawer. I used the free SketchUp Make program by Trimble Navigation to draft the basic design and document my dimensions. As seems to be the standard when I do these projects, the SketchUp plans get modified as I go through the actual work process. I was fortunate enough to secure a near full garage of rough cut wood, mostly walnut, but some cherry and maple. I started this project with some of this rough cut lumber measuring about 1 inch in thickness. After rummaging through the supply, I selected what I thought would be sufficient pieces for the 3 tables. Here I'm using a homemade guide in my skill saw to give me a good edge on one of the boards. Sometimes I was able to clean up the edge with simply a hand plane. In any event, the edges were ultimately run through the jointer. The flatness of the wood is always in question. The planer will only provide you with 2 parallel surfaces, so it's important to attempt to get one of the flat surfaces as true as possible. Here you can see this board has a high spot. I checked the boards out and where needed, take a moment to take off any material with the hand plane. After getting one edge cleaned up, I took the pieces to the radial arm saw, since I don't have a chop saw, to cut off the ends that are split or otherwise not usable. Finally, I get down to rough material ready for the planer. Now that the wood is finished, I'm ready to start building the tables. I started with the legs. The legs are 1 3/4 inch square. I used rough lumber that was a healthy 1 inch thick, machined on one side, and glued together 2-inch boards ripped from that stock. Since I was making 12 legs, I decided to gang up the legs and clamp them in groups. I always try to clean up as much glue as possible after it is set for about 30 minutes. While the glue's set up on the legs, I focused on the sides and the ends of the tables. These are 5 inches wide. I ripped the stock down to width and then laid the pieces out on the work table so that I could mark the various cuts with chalk. I then set up a stop on my miter fence at the table saw so that I could cut all the similar pieces to the same length. After cutting all the side sections, I turned my focus to the tabletops and the shelves. This was so that I could get these glued up and allow the glue to dry without needing to rush that process. The tops and shelves were made of multiple boards and glued together with a series of biscuits. Here I'm measuring out the biscuit locations and then simply cutting the biscuit slots. After cutting all the biscuit slots, it was just a matter of gluing up the boards into the various slabs. Notice the boards clamped on each end to keep the slabs from warping. At this point, these boards have been sanded with 220 grit paper. After the glue set up on the legs, I trimmed them to the rough length and ran them through the planer to size them at 3/4 inch square. I kept the legs long enough so that I could cut off any snipe that might occur during the planing process. Note that I ran the legs through the planer in sets of 4, keeping the plane sides aligned. The legs really didn't need to be planed as accurate as using a micrometer would indicate. I just find it easier to measure the progress with them. Finally, I get to the table saw and cut the legs to finished length. The legs have a taper on the 2 inside surfaces, starting 5 inches up from the floor and ending at the bottom so that there's a 1 inch square, essentially cutting off 3/4 of an inch. You can make a jig to do this, or in my case, I have a purchased variable jig for cutting tapers. For those that want to know, there is a method for calculating the angle for which to set the taper on the jig. This might be a little mind-boggling for the shop. It actually makes my brain hurt. For those that want to capture this, feel free to freeze the video and do so. An alternative method is to scribe a cut line on the workpiece or a similar sized waste piece. For practice, I used the cutoffs from the legs, and line the jig and fence up so that you achieve a cut line along the scribed line. That's it for the first part of building the end tables. You could go to my YouTube channel shortly and pick up the rest of the story. I'll show how I put the mortises in the legs, the tenons in the sides and ends, built the drawers and the drawer pulls, as well as other tasks leading up to final assembly. Thanks for watching.